Decoded.
Welcome back to Book Decoded, everybody. We're going to be picking apart some thought-provoking books and extracting golden nuggets of knowledge, This time, we're diving into The Empathy Fix by Keetie Roelen.
Yeah.
It's get ready for some serious mind-expanding insights.
Yeah, this book is not your typical, feel-good read about empathy.
Right.
Roelen challenges us to rethink our approach to poverty.
Yeah.
Moving beyond statistics and really understanding the lived experiences of people facing financial struggles.
Yeah, that's right. She dives deep into the human side of this global issue and how empathy can be a powerful tool for creating real change.
Yeah.
Speaking of empathy, it's a word we hear a lot these days.
Sure.
But what does it really mean, in this context?
Yeah. Roelen breaks down empathy into 3 key elements: perspective taking, shared feelings, and action.
Okay.
It's not just about understanding someone's situation intellectually, but actually stepping into their shoes and feeling what they're going through. There's even scientific evidence for this. Researchers found that when one partner in a couple received electric shocks, the other partner's brain lit up in areas associated with pain, even though they weren't being shocked themselves.
Oh, wow.
It's fascinating.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So it's like our brains are wired for empathy.
Right.
It makes you wonder if it's something we're born with or if it's learned.
Well, Roelen explores this too.
Okay.
She highlights the work of primatologist Frans de Waal, who's done some fascinating research with chimpanzees.
Really?
In one study, chimps had to choose between tokens, one that rewarded only themselves or another that rewarded both themselves and a companion.
Huh.
Guess what they consistently chose?
I'm guessing the one that benefited both of them.
You got it. Even our primate cousins seem to exhibit a sense of fairness and empathy. And when you consider that humans share nearly 99% of our DNA with chimps,
Right.
it suggests that empathy might be more deeply ingrained in us than we realize.
Yeah. Okay. So if we're hardwired for empathy, why does it seem to be in such short supply, especially when it comes to understanding poverty?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Roelen points to a few factors that might be contributing to this empathy gap.
Okay.
Research shows there's actually been a decline in empathy levels over recent decades, particularly among young people.
Oh, really? That's concerning. Why do you think that is?
Well, she suggests it could be due to several things, including the constant barrage of information and suffering we're exposed to. It's like we're experiencing empathy fatigue.
I can see that. We're bombarded with news and social media updates about tragedies around the world. It can feel overwhelming.
Exactly. And on top of that, there's the rise of tribalism and bias, which can make it easier to dehumanize those we perceive as different from us.
Right.
She uses the example of differing reactions to Ukrainian refugees versus refugees from other parts of the world, which illustrates this point perfectly.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder of how our biases can cloud our judgment and empathy. So how do we bridge this empathy gap, especially regarding poverty?
Roelen argues that we need to go beyond simplistic narratives and understand the cognitive costs of poverty.
Cognitive costs. That's an intriguing term. Can you elaborate on that?
It refers to the mental strain of constantly having to make difficult decisions with limited resources.
Okay.
Imagine having to choose between paying rent or buying groceries.
Right.
This kind of constant pressure can lead to what Roelen calls tunnel vision,
Tunnel vision.
where people focus on immediate needs and might overlook long-term benefits.
She gave the example of Laura in New Zealand, right?
Yes.
The woman who relied on those buy now, pay later schemes, even though she knew the risks.
Exactly. She was so caught up in the day-to-day struggle of making ends meet that she was willing to take on potentially crippling debt down the road.
Yeah, that perfectly illustrates how poverty can trap people in a cycle of short-term thinking, even when they understand the potential consequences.
And there's another layer to this.
Okay.
The poverty premium.
Poverty premium.
This is the idea that poverty actually costs more.
I'm not sure I follow. How does being poor cost more?
Think about it. If you can't afford to buy in bulk, you end up paying more per unit. If you don't have reliable transportation, you might rely on more expensive options like taxis or public transport that might not be as convenient.
And if you have a bad credit score due to past financial struggles,
Right.
you might get denied for loans or stuck with higher interest rates, making it even harder to get ahead.
Precisely.
Yeah.
These hidden costs of poverty add up and make it even harder to break the cycle.
Yeah, it's like the system is designed to keep people trapped in poverty.
That's a harsh reality Roelen doesn't shy away from. And these financial pressures, they impact more than just people's bank accounts,
Mm.
They impact their minds, too.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, there's a growing body of research that shows how poverty can literally reduce cognitive bandwidth.
So you're saying that being poor makes you less intelligent?
Not exactly. It's not about intelligence. It's about capacity. Studies have shown that the mental strain of poverty can impact things like focus and planning and decision-making.
Yeah.
It's like your brain is running on fumes because it's constantly preoccupied with these financial worries.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're constantly worried about where your next meal is coming from or how you're going to keep a roof over your head, it's going to be hard to think clearly about anything else.
Precisely. And this debunks the myth that poor people are just bad with money or lack motivation. Roelen emphasizes that people living in poverty often manage their finances with remarkable resourcefulness and creativity.
Yeah, she gave the example of families in Tanzania, right?
Yes.
Who intentionally buy smaller quantities of goods to prevent overconsumption and create informal sharing networks to stretch their resources further.
Yes. They develop ingenious strategies to make ends meet, proving that it's about ingenuity, not incompetence. And this is precisely why empathy is so crucial. Without understanding the mental and emotional burden of poverty, we're more likely to fall back on those harmful stereotypes.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the cognitive cost, but what about the emotional impact of poverty? How does shame play into all of this?
Yeah, that's another crucial aspect that Roland explores. Poverty isn't just about material deprivation, it's about social stigma and the erosion of dignity. It's not just about not having enough, it's about feeling less than because of it.
Right. She shared some pretty heartbreaking stories about individuals who internalize those feelings of worthlessness and shame due to their financial situation.
Like soy men in Haiti who believed she had no positive qualities because she struggled to provide for her children. It's a powerful reminder that poverty doesn't just affect your bank account, it impacts your sense of self.
Yeah, and this shame can lead to a whole host of negative consequences.
Absolutely. Roland discusses how shame can make people withdraw from social interactions or avoid seeking help or even engage in self-destructive behaviors. Remember Lee, the man who chose to sell the big issue in a less profitable location just to avoid running into people he knew.
Even though it meant delaying his reunion with his daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of how shame can become another barrier to escaping poverty. So we've explored the cognitive and emotional costs of poverty. What about the role of aspirations? How do they fit into this complex equation?
Well, aspirations are those hopes and dreams we have for the future, right? They can be incredibly motivating, driving us to work hard and achieve our goals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing from what you've said about the impact of poverty that it's not always that simple.
You're right. Roland argues that poverty can actually limit our aspirations.
Right.
When you're constantly struggling to survive, it can be hard to even imagine a different future for yourself. It's like your vision of what's possible gets narrowed.
So it's not just a lack of resources, but a lack of imagination.
In a way, yes. She talks about the window of aspirations and how our exposure to different possibilities shapes what we believe is achievable. She gives the example of Masuda Snaith, the British Bangladeshi writer who actually lowered her aspirations after attending school in a more affluent area. Her experiences growing up in social housing clashed with the expectations of her new peers, making her doubt her dreams of becoming a writer.
That's heartbreaking. It seems like her exposure to a different world actually made her window of aspirations smaller.
Yeah, it's a complex issue. On one hand, raising aspirations can be incredibly empowering. We see this in stories like Fiona Mutisi's, the Ugandan chess prodigy who rose from poverty to become a world-renowned player.
Right. But it's not enough to simply encourage people to dream bigger without providing the means to achieve those dreams.
Exactly. Roland cautions against overemphasizing aspirations without addressing the systemic barriers that prevent people from reaching their goals. She calls this the danger of frustrated aspirations, where a vast gap between dreams and reality leads to discouragement and self-defeating behavior. We need to create a world where those dreams are actually attainable.
So if we want to break the cycle of poverty, we need to go beyond individual solutions and focus on systemic change.
Precisely. It's not about fixing people. It's about fixing the systems that create and perpetuate poverty.
That makes perfect sense. But where do we even begin with something so massive and complex? Does Roland offer any concrete actions for change?
She does. She concludes her book with a powerful call to action, urging readers to engage in concrete actions that promote empathy and address poverty. For example, we can start by choosing our words carefully and avoiding language that perpetuates harmful stereotypes about people in poverty.
Okay, that's a great starting point. Language has a powerful influence on how we perceive the world and each other. What else can we do?
Another way to make a difference is to volunteer our time and resources to support organizations working directly with people in poverty. Think food banks, homeless shelters, or after-school programs. There are countless organizations doing incredible work, and they always need more support.
Okay, volunteering and donating are definitely on my list. What about on a more individual level? Are there things we can do in our everyday lives to promote empathy and address poverty?
Absolutely. We can be more conscious consumers. Consider the ethical implications of your purchases. Support businesses that align with your values and ensure that workers are treated fairly and paid a living wage.
That's a powerful reminder. It's so easy to get caught up in the convenience of online shopping and forget about the human cost behind the products we buy.
And perhaps most importantly, we can use our voices to advocate for policies that promote social justice and economic equality.
Voting is crucial, but it goes beyond simply casting a ballot, right? We need to be actively engaged in the political process, contacting our elected officials, attending town halls, and raising awareness about the issues that matter most.
You got it. It's about using our collective power to create a world where everyone has the opportunity not just to survive, but to thrive.
Okay, I have to admit it's inspiring, but it can also feel overwhelming. What difference can I really make in the face of such massive global challenges?
That's a feeling we all grapple with, but remember Roelen's key message.
Yeah.
Poverty is a complex issue that demands empathy, understanding, and a willingness to go beyond individualistic solutions.
So it's not about single-handedly saving the world, it's about doing what we can where we are with what we have.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that every act of empathy, every choice we make, every voice we raise can create ripples of change that extend far beyond ourselves.
I love that image, ripples of change. It reminds us that even small actions can have a significant impact. But what about the empathy we extend to ourselves? How can we practice self-compassion while still being aware of the suffering of others? Isn't there a risk of becoming overwhelmed by it all?
That's a crucial question, and one that Roelen doesn't explicitly address in her book. However, it's vital for anyone engaged in social justice work or trying to live a more empathetic life. It's about finding that delicate balance between being open to the world's pain and protecting your own heart and mind.
Yeah, it's true. If you're constantly exposed to trauma and suffering, you can become numb to it or even burn out.
Exactly. And that defeats the purpose, right? We need to find a sustainable way to cultivate empathy without being consumed by it.
So how do we strike that balance? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, it starts with recognizing that self-care isn't selfish. It's essential. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't show up for others in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I've heard the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's a perfect analogy. Make time for activities that bring you joy and replenish your energy, Whether that's spending time in nature or listening to music, connecting with loved ones, or simply taking a long bath, find what works for you.
So self-care is key. What else can we do to protect ourselves from empathy overload?
Setting boundaries is also important, We can't be everything to everyone, and we can't solve every problem. It's okay to say no sometimes, or take a step back from situations that are draining.
That makes sense. You can care deeply about a cause without sacrificing your own well-being.
Exactly. And it's also about being strategic with our empathy. We can't be equally invested in everything. Choose a few causes that resonate deeply with you and focus your energy there.
Focusing our energy. That's a great point. It's easy to spread ourselves too thin and end up feeling overwhelmed.
Right. And finally, don't forget the power of hope. It's easy to get bogged down in negativity and despair,
Yeah.
But we must believe that things can change and our actions matter. Hold on to that belief.
Like Desmond Tutu said, hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness.
Beautifully put. And sometimes that light comes from unexpected places. Think about those chimps choosing the pro-social tokens.
Yeah, or Kandanani's unwavering hope for her grandchildren's future, even in the face of her terminal illness.
Those stories remind us that even in the darkest of times, there's always a reason for hope, and that hope can be contagious.
So even though the empathy fix tackles some heavy issues, it ultimately leaves us with a sense of hope and a call to action.
It does. It reminds us that we all have the power to make a difference, and that empathy is the key to unlocking our collective potential to create a more just and equitable world.
This has been an incredible conversation. I'm feeling inspired and energized to put these ideas into practice. Thank you for sharing your insights with us today.
It was my pleasure. I always enjoy diving into these important topics with you.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of empathy. We hope you've gained some valuable takeaways and perhaps even feel inspired to make a difference in your own way.
Remember, even small acts of empathy can create ripples of positive change.
That's right. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep those empathy muscles strong. We'll be back next time with another thought-provoking book, Decoded.